everybody. This is Diane, the older, dodgier sister.
This is Marnell, and for those of you who have not been following the Fear the Walking Dead podcast, well, The Walking Dead has been on break. I am Diane's little sister, and sometimes co-host of Last Resort. Which
Also
I can't
the
say
younger, hotter sister.
Yeah, I've been getting really good feedback, so I can't really say co-host of Last Resort anymore. Somebody did call me the younger, hotter sister. Thank you for that.
And you proved with your picture of your Negan getup last night that you are, in fact, the younger, hotter sister.
And of course, I look at every picture of myself and go, oh, that's horrible. But I also listen to recordings of myself and go, I'm so sorry you people have to listen to that.
Oh, stop.
I'm like the nanny with a cold.
So, and in case you haven't figured it out, this is Biters.
This is Biters. And this is Boys versus Girls. We are podcasting episode 1, season 7. You may have already listened to Brian and Thomas, Thomas donated some money to the Southgate Kickstarter and was got a gig co-hosting the Biters podcast. And unfortunately, Diane could not cast with them. So Brian came up with the amazing idea. I'm bummed I didn't think of it myself. That we were going to do a Boys versus Girls podcast. So this is Diane and Marnell.
And, you know, I'm actually thinking there may be some merit to this, so we'll have to take a peek at this as a potential format change.
Well, and we've also looked at doing some Three Musketeer podcasting.
Yeah, so this could be a very interesting season for a variety of reasons.
Yes.
So,
none of which is what just went on, which, calm down, the redneck's still alive.
Okay,
right?
So
no
yes.
rioting.
Yes. Yeah, who knows? Who knows, man?
First of all, how are you feeling?
Better than I was 2 nights. Well, no, not 2 nights ago. Better than I was last night.
Did you cry?
I did. I will be honest and say that I did not cry at the actual deaths themselves. Spoiler alert, that is plural, deaths. But I cried like a bandit when Negan's group was drawing away and it was just the survivors left.
Where do we go from here scene.
Right.
Yeah, that was tough.
Right. And just seeing Rosita and Sasha connect and seeing Maggie's response is really hard.
Yeah. I have to say that I did not cry. We've all had 7 months to prepare for this. We knew that there was going to be a death. We did not realize there was going to be 2 deaths, although there was a little bit of scuttlebutt out there that, possibly they could kill off 2.
And there was a prediction on Biters that was accurate. I don't have it up, unfortunately, so I can't give credit where credit is due. But someone said it's going to be Glenn and Abraham.
See, and I had prepared myself for Abe. I was all the way. I was like, it's Abraham, it's Abraham. I'm not a book reader, so I frequently wiki the the Walking Dead comic books, but so I knew that Abraham had already reached his demise in the books.
Right, and Cudlitz actually referred to that on The Talking Dead, that he'd kind of outlived his shelf life.
Right. He was on borrowed time. And so, but you never know. There's no such character as Daryl in the books. And, what's her name is still alive and their sniper.
Yeah.
Andrea's still alive. And so, you never know where they're going to go with it. So of course, when they killed Abraham, I'm gutted to admit that I felt relief. I had prepared myself for Abraham and it was Abraham. And I was okay. We were all going to be okay.
Michael Cudlitz, if you have ever listened to the show, and if you are listening now, I was devastated by your death.
I was, but I also, he's been such a porch dick to Rosita that not completely unsympathetic, but I knew he was gone in the books, and I'm just like, they can't kill Daryl. They can't kill Glenn. They're not going to kill somebody like a Rosita or Sasha. I was like, maybe Michonne, but I was not prepared for Glenn. And I took Glenn pretty hard, but I didn't cry. I was pretty shocked. And by the time we got to the scene with Carl, I was just about stroking out with my blood pressure.
So I have so much to say. So I'm going to pin you down to some format stuff, and then we'll get deeper into all of this.
Absolutely.
Because I absolutely have comments about all of the things you just said.
I'm glad you're pinning me down because the numbers are amazing.
So before the numbers, what's your personal rating?
I usually try and rate really low, but I mean, how do you rate this? I mean, compared to what? How do you give something a 5 and then go from there? I want to give it a 5, but I can't because there's nowhere to go from there. So I got to give it a 4.9.
Oh God, that's so funny.
Yeah.
4.9 what?
4.9 bats to the head. I mean, what else?
So I am going to give it a 5. 5 out of 5 conversations over a dead lover's body.
Oh, that is so heart-wrenching. My blood pressure's up again.
Oh God.
All right.
So I just gotta justify the 5 for just a second, then I'll give you the numbers because you've heard them and they're pretty cool. So I just feel like it was kind of like, woohoo, they're back.
Yeah, exactly.
And several people have commented that this really feels like just a reboot to the series. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah.
So the numbers, of course, it's too early for the actual full-on same-day ratings, but I found a really cool article that was originally reported in the Orlando Sentinel.
Okay, yeah, I'm on it.
And in that particular TV market, they went up by 30% from the season 6 finale to the season 7 premiere. So they had this huge leap in viewership. And they also say that this is the highest rated episode ever in their market history.
Wow.
Of any television show.
Wow.
So, is that going to predict the rest of the U.S.? I don't know, but I think it bodes well.
For the listeners that don't know, Diane and I both live in Alaska. We live in, a 2-hour plane ride, another hour car ride from each other. So Alaska's pretty big. But last night, The Walking Dead was up against the Seahawks versus the Cardinals. So I would be really curious to find out what the numbers come out in our area because Alaska has no major football team, so just about everyone here roots for the Seahawks. So I'd be really, really curious to see what the Northwest numbers are as opposed to the Florida. But 30%, that's amazing.
Well, I was rooting for the survivors, but the saviors had their day. So yeah, the numbers are cool, and I'm looking forward to actually having the real numbers, the actual numbers next week.
Yeah.
So the title, I feel like I just totally missed it. The day will come when you won't be. Did you catch a reference that was linked to, or?
I think it's links to something that Negan said. His whole reference to what did you think you were all going to sit down to Thanksgiving Day dinner? I think it was a reference that those words sound familiar, and I feel like they came from Negan. So the day will come when you won't be together, when you all, won't be above ground.
Or when you won't be the leader.
Yeah.
I mean, it could be interpreted as so many things. I was just wondering if I missed, like, some particular reference. I feel like I did. So I haven't listened to the boys yet, so we'll have to see what they had to say, if they addressed it at all.
I didn't either. I saw that come up today, and I wanted so badly to click on it, and I'm like, no, stay fresh.
I didn't want it to muddle our awesomeness.
Yeah.
So just real quick, most people probably know this. Greg Nicotero directed. Scott M. Gimple wrote.
You sadist.
And
the only saving grace was the hand. We're not quite into maybe that part of the book yet where somebody loses a hand.
I was going to say spoiler alert. Don't say who it is, because we don't know if it'll ever happen. But my God, they teased the hell out of it, didn't they?
Oh, I thought it was going to happen.
I did too. Several times.
I was like, poor Carl. Like every season he gets shot, or limbs chopped off, but the only thing that I can say is it is so easy to put an eye patch over him. It is much, much tougher to do, to try and CGI out that hand,
right,
or do a stump, or so that is the only saving grace is just the sheer semantics of having one arm.
Well, and totally, not only was I convinced that it was going to happen, but there were times I thought it was going to happen to Rick. Like when Negan sat down after they came back in the RV and
he cleaned the axe.
I thought, oh my God, this is it. Oh my God, this is horrible.
Yeah.
But
did they not tease the hell out of everything in this episode? Because we joined our survivors right where we left off, and I expected them to pan over and there to be, a void in the line of kneeling people.
Or like a body slumped on the ground that was kind of obvious who it was, but not necessarily gruesome.
And 15 minutes in, we're like, who is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, this episode was a total tease.
So the question I have for you is, did Greg Nicotero and Scott M. Gimple plan well in advance, well before the feedback about the finale, that they were going to do this episode together? Or is this some sort of apology for the backdraft over the season 6 cliffhanger?
Did you watch The Talking Dead?
I did, and I mean, it sounds like they have planned this particular episode for a long time, but they didn't necessarily say that Gimple and Nicotero were going to be doing it. And I always think, when you pull out Gimple and Nicotero, you better have something big.
Well, and Gimple made the comment that they have a lot of these stories written out, what they're going to do, even if it veers from the comic books, but there's all sorts of side storylines that can, so they don't know when things are actually going to come to fruition on screen for the most part. But he did say that he was I think Kirkman said that he was really upset how he let Abraham go in the books. And so he wanted to do him justice here. And then they also wanted to pay homage to Glenn dying. And I guess the whole eyeball popping thing and
from the comic.
Is straight out of the comic.
Yes.
So, yeah. So, I'm really upset at Glenn dying. I mean, he's day one. He's been with us. He has come into our homes for 6 years.
Right. And literally from day one, because what's the last thing we heard in the pilot? It was him calling Rick a dumbass.
You in the tank.
Yeah.
In there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, to lose and to watch his memoriam and things like that, it was really tough to lose Glenn. But Glenn went out as Glenn. Glenn went out taking one for the team, and that's what Glenn does.
Yeah.
Glenn's the guy that, drives the race car out of town with the siren blaring and, gets lowered down into the well. And, I'm still not convinced he's dead. I mean, he's under a dumpster somewhere, right?
Maybe a few teeth.
Oh, that's just, it's so tough. but we'll get to our goods and everything,
Right.
and him dying is going to have a really good story arc to it. So
I kind of pulled out featured cast member of the week because I felt really bad about Michael Cudlitz being overshadowed by losing Stephen Yeun.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say a few things about Michael Cudlitz because I think he's really cool.
I love the guy.
I do too, and I've got to tell you, I fell in love with him because of Band of Brothers.
And I fell in love with him because of Southland.
Interesting. And I will tell you, I've watched a few episodes of Southland, but I have not been able to binge the way I would like to binge on that series. It's definitely in the binge bucket, but I'm not there yet.
My favorite scene with him in Southland, I have to say this, is he and his rookie ride-along pull up on a naked jogger on the city streets of LA. And he's like, "Excuse me, sir, did you know it's illegal to jog on the city streets?" And the jogger's like, "No, I'm sorry." And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "You want to take the next exit and go jog on the highway?" And the naked jogger's like, "Okay, thank you." And Michael Cudlitz looks at his rookie and he's like, "Less paperwork. Now is he CHP's problem?"
Oh my God, that is so funny.
And I'm just like, oh my God, that is such an Abraham thing. Yeah. I love it.
So, he's great. And I just wanted to say a couple of things about his history in TV and movies. First of all, I was floored by how extensive his history was. His IMDb page is huge.
Yeah.
And, Josh McDermott made the joke about him, acting for decades. You could almost believe that when you look at his page.
Yeah, 1989 is his first acting credit.
Yeah, so literally decades.
Yeah.
He was in Lost, which I think is an interesting connection to this series because there are so many people who have touched Lost in some way who have become a part of this series, and so many fans of Lost who have become super fans of Walking Dead. So I thought that was cool.
He's got a Buffy the Vampire Slayer credit, which I am a huge Buffy fan.
And he has a 6 Feet Under credit, which I'm a huge 6 Feet Under fan. So it was just really neat. And the other thing that I read was that he actually has been involved in a number of stage productions, which I really don't see him as a stage actor. So that was a really neat piece of information to find. He's been in Much Ado About Nothing on stage, and he's been in Lion and Winter on stage, and those are two of my favorite plays. So
who was he in Much Ado About Nothing?
I don't know. I didn't find who he played. They just made reference to the stage plays that he's done.
Okay, because that's one of my favorite plays too. So.
I'm thinking in Lion and Winter he probably played Richard.
Yeah, not familiar with it.
Oh my God. So we're going to all totally diverge for just a moment. And I will tell you, if you have not watched the movie Lion in Winter with Peter O'Toole and Anthony Hopkins and Katharine Hepburn, you need to stream it. It is so good.
I'm writing it down.
Because the dialogue is wicked.
Alrighty.
It's very clever dialogue. It's fabulous.
That's a Diane plug.
Okay, so I just wanted to say a couple things about his death. So I liked the way that Sonequa Martin Green talked about him on Talking Dead. She was talking about how he was a soldier and he sacrificed himself for others.
Yeah.
And I thought that that was a really real statement about his role in the season finale and the premiere. And Chris Hardwick said it, and when you look back, it's so true. We were all trying so hard to find clues about who got it.
I know where you're going.
The clue was in his stance.
Yep.
Because Chris Hardwick was right. Everybody else was kind of hunched over, bowed over, and there's Abraham just totally staring Negan down with this upright, proud stance.
He is just looking at Negan like, take me out. I'm going to be a problem.
Yep. And so I felt like that was a really big clue that many of us missed. I mean, I ultimately was like, okay, I think it's Abe and Glenn. Someone posted that on our Facebook page, and I said, I'm kind of going with that theory. I think that's a good theory. But I didn't do it because of his appearance or his stance.
My theory was Abe and Maggie, but yeah, and Maggie, because she was pretty much at death's door,
Right.
and it would not. I could totally see Negan taking out a woman that he didn't think was going to be useful in the future. So
well, and one of our fans, one of the Walking Dead or one of the Biters folks, actually commented that they thought it would be Maggie because, there's no place for another baby in the apocalypse.
Right.
And I was going to respond, and I'm glad I kind of held it. So if Maggie died in this season opener, Glenn or someone else would have had to take in the really huge role that she has in developing the relationship with Hilltop.
Right.
So, if they are true to the books, we're going to see so much more from Maggie, and we're going to see a really changed Maggie.
Yeah. And that's my good.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay. So I'm going to finish it up really, really fast, and then we'll get to your good, and you can talk about your first one since you already let it go. Actually, I'm here. So why don't you start with your good?
We are gonna go old school, and we are gonna do the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yep, in an homage to Kirk and Jeff, who we very much miss.
Yes. So the good, Maggie for me. I have never really been that big of a Maggie cheerleader, and especially this last season, and now she's pregnant, and a baby in the apocalypse, and after Glenn died, after Negan's guys left and everything, and Rick has just been ground into a fine paste. And everyone else is completely deflated and defeated. Maggie is like, no, this is not the end. This is the beginning. Like, we're fighting this guy, and we are going to win, or we will all die trying.
Yeah.
Give me liberty or give me death. She's going to become such a huge character because of Glenn's death. And, I think that really does, that gives a lot of credit to Glenn going out the way he did. So my good is Maggie is going to be an amazing leader while Rick is kowtowing to Negan. And if anyone can outthink Negan, it will be Maggie.
Well, and she certainly has motivation.
Yep.
Not that our whole group doesn't, but she has a particularly special motivation.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you about Maggie. This is kind of diverting to Rotten Potpourri, but they showed that table, the imagined table with everyone gathering.
Yes.
And Glenn was holding a baby.
Yes.
Do you think that foreshadows that she will, in fact, carry this pregnancy to term?
I do. I have a hard time believing it just because of how sick she is, how ill she is. But I really want to believe it because I want to believe that there is a piece of Glenn still alive.
Well, and so here's the truth.
Not under a dumpster.
Women can have threatened miscarriages, but still carry their pregnancy to term. People can get horribly sick. Women who are pregnant can get horribly sick with things that are not related to their pregnancy that look really scary, and then everything's fine with the pregnancy. So it's not completely out of bounds.
Right. And of course, everything looks even scarier when there doesn't seem to be any help around. There's no hospitals. There's no, very few doctors, let alone, OBGYNs. She's lucky she got a sonogram or an ultrasound. And so they credit to the makeup team for a non-zombie makeup job. I was convinced that she was just going to keel over kneeling down. I expected her to get up after Glenn died and have blood be pouring out of her. So, they really made me believe that she is going to lose the baby. But at this point, with the imaginary flash forward, I'm really hoping that the baby survives. I'm not a big baby person. My children have 4 legs. But I really want a piece of Glenn to survive.
Yeah. And I do have to tell you, saying what you said about everything looks scary when you don't have help. The other thing is when you're not someone who wants to deal with a baby, trust me, I've worked in healthcare for 20 years. Everything looks scary when it's happening to a pregnant woman.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But cool. So anything else and you're good?
No, that was my good. What is yours?
So, of course, I totally cheated and had 2. My first one really was the connection between Sasha and Rosita. I feel like something is really resolved there, and I feel like they're going to be able to go forward together.
Oh, and they'll be a force to be reckoned with.
I do, yeah. And I feel like they could well be very damaging to Negan and the Saviors as well, together.
Yeah.
So yeah. I liked the moment of connection. I love that image of the 2 of them, each with a hand on Abraham, just silently connecting with each other.
Yeah. And Sasha approaching Rosita and saying, "I'm going to take him," Yeah.
Stating and asking permission at the same time. Yeah. I really like that a lot. So that was definitely one of my goods. The other one was just simply, I'm not caught up on the comic books. I've purposely lagged behind. But the adherence to the comic books, I really appreciated that because I felt like Glenn's death in episode 100 was so huge that for that not to happen
would have been a disservice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the other thing, quite honestly, is that, if people don't know it now, Dr. Denise is the person who took Abraham's death. Abraham's death in the comic was what Dr. Denise, how she died.
Oh.
Yeah. So Abraham actually got an arrow through the eye.
That's right.
Yeah. And Denise did not. So it's kind of cool just that they brought it back around and did go ahead and get Abraham out of the picture the way he was out of the picture in the comic book.
Yeah, and they gave us an amazing season opener with it.
Yeah. And so I just really appreciated the nod to the comics.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's your bad?
My bad is Rick.
Okay.
Really my bad is kind of the guys, and it kind of fits in with our overall boys versus girls podcasting. And I know Brian's going to come back and say they were all there because of Maggie, so it's the girls' fault. But, okay, so Rick is sitting there, and Abraham has just had his head pulverized into the ground by a guy who did it cheerfully, surrounded by, 4 dozen of his cohorts. You were all kneeling. And you're really going to challenge his manhood at that point? Really? I mean, I know that Rick is, he's the leader and it's a dictatorship and he was the sheriff and, he's used to being in charge and everything. But, dude, shut your mouth.
Give him the look that he wants you to give him.
Yeah, just play along until you have your axe back, for Christ's sake. So I'm really upset at Rick, and then unfortunately Daryl did get Glenn killed.
Okay, that was a total douche move.
Yeah,
it really was.
But Rick continued to challenge. And Negan drags him into the Winnebago and they go for a drive. And he's just continuing to he's like a petulant child like who doesn't want to go to bed. Like he won't fetch the axe and bring it back. And like I would be that dude's lapdog at that point.
So, question, do you think it was because Rick was exhausted and traumatized? Or do you think it was exhaustion, trauma, and just the fact that he was like, I'm the leader in this group?
All of the above.
Yeah.
I really, when Negan threw him in the Winnebago after the whole pick up the axe and everything, Negan said to him, think about what just happened and think about what could still happen. I mean, he is threatening just to kill everyone and call it a day. I mean, you don't challenge that at that point. I mean, this guy wants you to work for him. That's all he really wants is to be a dictator and for you to get him 25% of your stuff or whatever they come up with. And at that point, you just say, yes, sir. And then you formulate a plan to kill him. Why do you have to is that a guy thing? Like, I don't understand that.
Well, the other thing is, I kind of feel like Rick was treating him like Gareth or like the governor who looked like real baddos until Negan rolled out. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Negan is a horse of a different color. I mean, how quickly we forget, the governor and the claimers and Terminus and, all the other big bads. How quickly we forget when we are confronted with Negan.
And maybe I'm being a little conciliatory. I'm not going to say that it's the guys. But I will say that I find it very interesting in terms of the way women process things, that the person who was like, no, we get it. You're totally right.
Michonne.
Was Michonne.
Yeah.
And Michonne is also the person who knocked Rick out when he was on a rampage and tirade in the streets of Alexandria. I mean, she's shown some common sense. So is that because Michonne is Michonne, or is that because Michonne is a woman? I'm not sure.
Are women peacekeepers type.
Right. I mean, we're certainly socialized to be peacekeepers.
Right.
So, which is not necessarily a skill in the zombie apocalypse. Let's be honest.
Right. But in this situation, it would have just served him so much better
to shut up.
And only when he was confronted with having to chop off Carl's arm did he break.
And I've got to be honest, going back to the arm thing again, I didn't expect Negan to let it go. I totally expected him to be like, okay, yeah, you answered me, but you still have to chop off Carl's arm. Yeah,
like I said, I when the Carl's arm scene, I was at stroke level with I ended the episode in hives.
Oh, God. So you didn't cry, but you broke out in hives?
Yeah.
I think that's pretty significant.
Oh, definitely.
I think that might actually be a little more significant than crying.
You know how I calm myself to go to bed? I went and watched A Clockwork Orange, okay? I needed to settle my mind a little.
You know how I calm myself to go to bed?
Klonopin?
No, I actually started to read the All Out War component of The Walking Dead in the comic books.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of us had a peaceful night's sleep last.
No, I don't think so either. There were an awful lot of tweets saying, I don't think I can go to work tomorrow.
Yeah, and Chris Hardwick gave us all the day off.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so... sorry, go ahead.
I think visions of Lucille danced in our heads all night.
No kidding.
So yeah, that was my bad. It was mostly Rick, but Daryl did really, people challenging Negan, why?
Yeah.
What purpose does it serve at that point? You just watched Abe get his head bashed in, and then Glenn dies, and only when you're confronted with a possible third gruesome death that just chalk it up to lesson learned and move on and shut your mouth. Okay, now I'll shut my mouth and let you go into your bad.
So I'm going to tell you it actually has nothing to do with any of the characters in the series.
Mm.
My bad, and here we go again. I'm cheating. I took two.
Two.
My bad, first of all, are the fans who are like, I'm quitting the show because it's too brutal.
Oh.
So my response is, come on, folks, this is the zombie apocalypse. Did you expect it to be nice?
Yeah. It's not. It's not going to be Zombieland. It's not going to be. Oh God, what was the one with Simon Pegg?
Shaun of the Dead.
Yes, it's not going to be anything like that.
Well, and where have you been for the last 6 seasons?
Right?
Beth got her brains blew out because somebody made a reflexive decision after she was injured. You know, Herschel got his head chopped off.
The first episode of the series, we see like a 9-year-old girl, it's a walker, but a 9-year-old girl get her head blown off. So
with the inimitable Colt Python.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'm totally like, and I've even got friends of my own who are like, I'm quitting this series. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
You've come this far?
Yeah.
And now you're quitting? Where have you been for the last 6 seasons?
I've seen those, and I've seen a lot of, I guess there was just a post today that there's some sort of complaint that they went too far with the violence and what about the children? And I'm like, if you let your children watch The Walking Dead, that's your parenting, you know?
Okay, I'm going to totally laugh because that was my other bad. So the Parents Television Council condemned the episode as, quote, far too violent for families to watch together, end quote. And here's my response, which is very similar to yours. Seriously? So what about the last 6 season convinced you that you could watch this with your family, with your children? And they're actually suggesting an even more severe TV rating than TVMA. And, you know, my whole thing is just exactly what yours is. It is showing some judgment in parenting.
They ate Bob in front of Bob.
Right. I mean, I totally support parents not letting their kids watch the show.
Absolutely. You know, Lip Sync Battle is an amazing show for families to watch together. Don't watch The Walking Dead with your 8-year-old.
But don't mess it up for me.
Right.
Yeah, so here's the other thing that the Parents Television
Don't make me
Council...
pay for HBO when I want to watch The Walking Dead.
Well, so here's the other thing that the Parents Television Council said, and this is a direct quote from their statement. This brutally explicit show is a powerful demonstration of why families should have greater control over the TV networks they purchase from their cable and satellite providers.
No.
Yeah, so once again, no, you don't get to control the content of my cable and satellite package. You don't get to control what the TV network I'm watching decides to do creatively or not.
So I don't know.
You exercise some parenting skills.
Are they not tech savvy? I mean, the ratings are put on there so that you can actually you can go into the settings of your TV and you can filter what stuff you want your kids to see and what you don't.
Right?
So just put a password on AMC. You'll be fine.
Yeah, so my ranty bad is, if you haven't figured out by now that this is the zombie apocalypse and it's violent and you're quitting the show over this episode, I'm very sorry for you. B, if you have not figured out what is appropriate to share with your kids on TV and what isn't, by your own standards, not necessarily by mine, I feel bad for you.
Well, and if your kids are at an age where they're watching this and they don't understand that this is a fictionalized show, you know, yeah.
Maybe some therapy as well as some parenting.
Yeah.
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 So that's my rant. That's my bad.
Well, I agree with your bad.
So what's your ugly? And remember, the ugly can be either amazing or awful.
My ugly is awful.
Okay, go for it.
Daryl.
Yeah.
What are they going to do with Daryl?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that because my immediate response was, are they going to disfigure him like Dwight? Are they going to rape him? What are they going to do to him?
Okay, yeah, so did you catch that?
Yes!
Okay, Negan, the dude, they're holding Daryl and what Dwight.
Yes.
Dwight's like, I'll just finish him off, and Negan says, "You don't kill that, not until you try a little."
Exactly.
Like, wait! I don't hear a banjo. Stop.
Oh. Okay, so that was disturbing to me for a couple of different reasons. First of all, just the idea that the redneck heartthrob, yes, thank you, Walker Stalker Khan, is going to be drug away and raped by a gang of saviors is really disturbing. But the other thing is what little we know about Daryl's history. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine how traumatizing abuse at the hands of the saviors is going to be?
We've always suspected that he and his brother Merle were abused, which is why Merle became a bully, and we're pretty sure that he bullied Daryl.
Well,
too.
Daryl even picked up that book in season 4 that was something like recovering from childhood sexual trauma.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that my ugly is what are we doing with Daryl?
Yeah.
We did see in these scenes coming for this season that Dwight was wearing his Daryl's vest.
Oh my God. I didn't see that because I didn't watch it. And I'm so sorry you spoiled that. Oh my God.
Okay, so no, everyone was like, oh my God, Daryl dies. Daryl's gonna die. They're gonna kill Daryl.
Oh, no, that's a good head fake.
So the current running scuttlebutt is that they are Negan's going to keep Daryl so that Rick stays in line because of course,
right? And he said that. He said, "I will send parts of him to you."
Yeah, or I'll make you come and do it.
Yeah.
And so that's going to be the whole. Why we can't just go to Eugene's munitions factory and make a whole bunch of ammo and go and cut down all the saviors is because they've got Daryl. So we're really going to have to get very close to Negan and like hamstring him. Right. So I'm worried about what happens to Daryl in the meantime because I don't think that Negan's prison's going to be 5-star.
No. And so here's a totally different take on things. So you probably know from looking at old interviews and just kind of following some of the news around The Walking Dead that Norman Reedus was like, oh God, I don't want to make this character too overblown. Do we really have to do the crossbow? This is really too much. And, people kind of commented last season about Dwight taking the crossbow was kind of a way of relieving that character of that burden, that image. And I'm just kind of wondering if the changes that are going to be wrought in this character as a result of this are a way of changing that character further to Norman Reedus's original vision of the character. Well,
and he even said on The Talking Dead that he is always going to blame himself for Glenn's death.
Right. And I thought it was really interesting that the Talking Dead audience said 76% of them said, "Oh, we don't hold him responsible."
Okay.
It's like
he thought he was going to get booed when he went out there.
I know.
And, like the redneck can do no wrong.
Right. And seriously, come on. I mean, I like Daryl Dixon. Don't get me wrong. I really like Daryl Dixon, but he's responsible.
Yeah.
He is responsible for what happened to Glenn. Totally.
Yeah. And Negan is such an interesting character. I've always kind of loved the villain. I'm a huge horror and suspense fan. I can't not watch Nightmare on Elm Street when it comes on. Like, I'm terrified of Freddy Krueger. I'm an adult woman, and I am terrified of Freddy Krueger. But I love the villain. I absolutely love him. And, Negan was so on point to not kill the person who fell out of line, to kill somebody else and make that person responsible.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. I really didn't.
Yeah, because look at Abraham. He was like, I'm going to take one for the team and it'll be all right. And, so, I'm sure when Daryl rushed Negan, he thought, I'm just going to kill him and I'll probably die, but it'll be okay. no, he's going to kill somebody else.
Yeah.
You're going to have to watch it. So as a villain, Negan was very on point with that. And I don't know if he said it originally, but the kid who plays Wesley Crusher,
Will Wheaton. Yeah.
Will Wheaton. He did say one time on the Will Wheaton project, the villain is always the hero of his own story.
Right. And there's some truth in that for Negan.
Look at it from Negan's perspective.
Right.
He has got to keep all of these people in line and productive when there is a societal breakdown. And Rick Sponge killed a whole bunch of saviors. So he has to make an example, and he has to be the strong leader. And yeah, he's a sadist in doing it, but it's going to keep people in line. And so I really think that them not killing Daryl as a result of Daryl, falling out of line, and killing Glenn instead it's going to weigh huge on Daryl for the rest of Daryl's existence in our story.
I have a question for you that springs from your ugly. Do you love Negan? Do you love this villain? Because there are a lot of people who do.
Yes, I do. I was wearing the costume yesterday, and when he hit Glenn, I was like, yeah, I'm really rethinking my chosen costume. But, he's just, from what we've seen of him and what I know of him from, the books that I don't read, he's going to be a formidable foe for our group. And it's going to be like nothing we've ever seen. And it is going to be like ripples on a pond. I mean, this will go on forever.
I am reserving judgment about loving this villain. I am.
Okay, to be clear, I'm loving hating him.
Which is what a lot of people say.
Or I'm hating loving him. I can't decide. There is a big love-hate relationship going on. Right. But yeah, Jeffrey Dean Morgan was a great choice as casting, too. So.
Well, and so you actually lead into my ugly, which is Jeffrey Dean Morgan as Negan. Because all of the little details in his performance just made it perfect. I was a little bit skeptical about him as Negan at the end of the season, last season. But, oh my God, he played this whole episode so perfectly.
Yeah.
Just some of the details that I wrote down. So he's totally dancing with glee while he's beating Glenn's still twitching corpse. And he makes these cracks about Lucille being a dirty girl after he kills Abe.
She's a vampire bat.
Right, and he makes a vampire bat joke after he beats Glenn beyond recognition.
Mm-hmm.
There's that scene where he's walking away from Glenn, and there's like scalp hanging from Lucille.
Oh, that was awful.
And I just think all of those little details just make his rendition of Negan very, very good.
Yes. And, on the I rewatched it tonight just before we started. And when he hits Glenn for the second time and Glenn's eyeball pops and Glenn turns to Maggie.
Oh, I know.
He says, Maggie, I'll find you. Yeah. And it's a callback to before Terminus, right. They find each other. And Negan looks at Maggie and he really he totally drops the facade, he I really feel for you, and it's all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, this guy actually does have a conscience. And then he swings again and hits him and just squeals with laughter, and it's like, oh my God, he's a sociopath. Right,
and his whole, I'm just getting started.
Yeah.
I have to tell you that he was so disturbing. It was actually really startling to see him all buddied up with the cast when they were on The Talking Dead.
Yeah.
It was very disconcerting to see him hanging out with them like one of them.
Yeah. That has got to be a fun role to play. It's got to be a little difficult, but it's got to be a fun role to play when he took Rick's face in his hand and was like,
Right?
speak when you're spoken to. Like, I that would be so fun to just get all your anger out, but I think I would get the giggles between takes. So credit where credit's due. He does well in the part.
Well, and I think the other thing that's really interesting is that there are times that he lets the joking facade drop and we see like these true hints of evil,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. And
so
yeah, he has this gleeful sadist, but underneath it, he's not a good guy. He's a sociopath.
Right. Well, and the other thing that I just want to say about Jeffrey Dean Morgan's portrayal is that there was a lot of speculation and moaning and groaning last season about how are they going to portray Negan without letting him drop F-bombs all over the place, because that's one of the characteristic things in his comic book portrayal. I mean, every other word is an F-bomb. And I'm here to tell you, I love dropping the F word. I do. Just as much as anybody, but I didn't miss it at all. I really didn't notice that it wasn't present in his performance.
No,
so
it's one of those. I like that he doesn't. It's one of those. It's kind of like a crazy psycho killer being like a germaphobe. Like it's one of those quirks.
Right.
Yeah, it's just one of those quirks that it's just like. That's really weird,
Yeah. Yep.
There's something off about that guy. Somebody who doesn't swear, I don't trust you.
Well, he does swear a little bit, but he doesn't swear hardcore, so.
Right. I mean, he's no Mr. Rogers with a baseball.
All right, so what's that stuff that I smell?
Well, suck my nuts. That's rotting potpourri.
That's awesome.
I was like, we hadn't said it. I can't say it. Oh, I'm gonna miss Abrahamisms.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Because loose ends make my ass itch.
Well, if you'd shave it once in a while, so it could be dolphin smooth.
Oh my god.
All right.
All right, so I'm gonna go first. So I thought that the RV not starting and Negan being like, well, this is a piece of crap. I don't think he said that, but I'm trying to keep it G-rated, Rob. I think that the RV not starting was a really nice and touching homage to Glenn and Dale, like holding Dale's RV together with duct tape and twine.
Yeah.
And I think actually it was a little bit of foreshadowing about Glenn being the second death, because at that point it hadn't been revealed.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, I thought that there was a little bit of symbolism behind the Winnebago not starting.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I felt that moment too. Yeah. My rotting potpourri, I have to get it out. It was this whole episode. It was the entire. I really, really would have liked this episode to be the season finale of season 6.
So
and to have the 7 months to process all of this, because I feel like they were trying to make this. They were trying to put a new beginning. And really, I wanted an end. Like, I think they should have made that the end of the season, and then we start off with what are we going to do about Negan?
So I've got to tell you that I was really bummed by the cliffhanger last season, and I've asked myself again and again, is it worth it? Was it worth it to wait? Was this enough payoff to wait? And I've actually decided... And this is just right now as you bring this up, I'm okay with it not being a nice, neat little package that ended in season 6. And then we cleanly have this, okay, what do we do now in season 7? I'm okay with it being messy because you know what? The whole thing was messy.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I love the suspense. I with the passing of oh, I can't even think of his name right now. It's too late. We watched Blazing Saddles and Willy Wonka.
Gene Wilder.
Gene Wilder, thank you. And there's a really, really good line in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory where Willy Wonka says, "The suspense is terrible. I hope it will last." And I feel that. Like, I love the suspense, but I think for me, the suspense would have been better not who dies, but oh my God, Negan is insane. Like, what is he going to do next? What are they going to do? Where do we go from here? I think I would have loved the terror of not knowing what happens next with Negan rather than the terror of who gets the bat. But that's just me.
I just want to give you props. No one else could have worked Gene Wilder and Willy Wonka into this conversation.
I am all over the map. I am a very well-rounded geek.
So speaking of which, because you're like my Bible girl when we do Preacher, and we need to get back to that.
We do.
I thought that Rick's choice about having to choose between the group and choose between cutting off Carl's hand was totally a nod to the story of Abraham and Isaac in the Bible. I mean, it was such a biblical choice to have to choose between his child and the well-being of his group.
Yeah.
And the thing that was really interesting when I looked it up, because it's been a long time since I've read it, in Genesis chapter 22, it actually says that God commands Abraham to sacrifice Isaac, quote, and stopped him at the last minute because, quote, here we go, "Now I know you fear God."
Oh,
I know, right?
So on the nose.
That just totally gave me chills when I read that. I was like, "Yep,
I love it.
Now I know you fear God. Now I know you fear Negan." That's the look I wanted.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That is not by accident.
Yeah, I mean, here we go again, right? Nothing's by accident in any of these shows. So, yeah. When I saw that, I was pretty amazed by that. I also really loved, and I know people have talked about this already, but using Rick's eyes and Rick's recollection to tell the story.
Yeah, they did mention that in The Talking Dead, that it was told through Rick's eyes.
And the other thing is as he was visualizing other people getting killed, I thought, oh, there's good use for all that footage of all of the deaths that they filmed.
Yes. Yeah, they did film everyone's death so that nobody knew who really died.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's funny is my other half, like, I think he was only kind of half paying attention right there. And he's like, wait, what's going on? I'm like, no, he's imagining this happening. Yeah. It's okay.
But I was not half paying attention. I was paying attention, and I even had that moment of, oh my God, what is he saying? Who was somebody else killed? And then I realized, oh no, he truly is thinking about what could potentially happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So
anything else in your potpourri?
It was brought to my attention by our niece Cassie that, and these are my words, not hers. Being in love in The Walking Dead is like being a horny teenager on Elm Street. You're gonna die.
That's pretty funny.
So Michonne and Rick need to break up like right now.
There was actually a lot of speculation that it was Michonne. So
she was on the top of my list. Yeah. But look at the doc, Tara's girlfriend.
Right.
She dies. They're in love. She dies. Glenn dies. Abraham dies. Like there's nobody in a relationship right now but Rick and Michonne.
But the other thing is, and I think that this is an argument that Brian and I had last season. It's the zombie apocalypse. You're going to hook up. You're going to respond to that normal human drive to
And
hook
people
up,
are
to
gonna die.
reproduce, to connect, and people are going to die.
Yeah.
So, although your theory may be right, we'll see if Michonne is still standing by the end of the season.
No kidding. Yeah. My other one, I think couple last things. So there's supposed to be, if you're a fan of the books, there's supposed to be a story arc with Negan and Carl is supposed to buddy up. But did you see the look in his eyes when he was killing Glenn? Did you see the look in Carl's eyes?
I'm going to have to go back and look. I mean, I think he was horrified, but maybe I'm just reading.
Hate. I mean, it was just pure, unadulterated hate. And so the only thing I can think that Carl's going to buddy up is to basically slit Negan's throat in his sleep, you know?
So my recollection, and I'm going to grant you it's been quite a while since I read issue 100, which is the issue where Glenn was killed in the comic book. But my recollection is that one of the reasons that Carl initiates a connection with Negan is to basically be like, you killed my friend and I'm going to get you.
Okay.
And it becomes, and I haven't read all of the story arc with Negan, so I can't say exactly where it goes, but it does become twisted.
Good. Okay.
So it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
I was just really interesting I mean, it was a deliberate look at how bad Carl hates Negan.
Right.
Yeah. So, my other thing was at the very, very end when Rick is driving the Winnebago away and the lone walker.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up because I have something to say about that too.
I think the way that Rick looked at the walker, he realized that those are not the monsters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that if Scooby-Doo taught us anything, it's that humans are the monsters.
Well, and so here's the other thing that I think about that walker. So it fell to its knees in a pile of blood that was either Glenn's or Abe's.
Mm-hmm.
And it looked like it was going to start feeding itself out of that fresh blood, or that relatively fresh blood.
Brain matter.
And yeah, and brains, you're right. I didn't even think about that. So for me, it was a couple of things. It was a reminder that walkers are ever present. So even though humans are the bigger threat now, the walkers are always an undercurrent.
Yeah.
And having that walker fall to its knees in that pile of blood and brains...
didn't even catch it.
But having it do that, it was, this is real. This really happened. It was just kind of that final driving the point home. You know?
Yeah. You know, I have to say that right before we watched the episode, it was like, okay, you know, let's get ready. Let's fill up the drink glasses and make sure everyone's got an empty bladder. And I suddenly, before I hit go, I had anxiety.
Oh my gosh.
It was Schrodinger's cast. The entire,
I love that.
Right? Okay, so the entire cast was both simultaneously dead and alive.
That is perfect.
At the same time. It was Schrodinger's cast members, and that's all. That's my last geek out moment.
That is awesome. That is a perfect geek out moment to end on.
Yep.
So now we can listen to the boys and see what they had to say.
Probably nothing as good as we said. I'll bet they didn't even work in Suck My Nuts.
Oh, you think? I think they probably did.
Yeah, maybe. We've never podcasted with Thomas, so we don't.
We're not sure.
Yeah, we can't judge, and you know, far be it for me to judge people because I like Nickelback and candy corn, so I'm a terrible judge of character.
So my mini-me would have to give you a pass for liking Nickelback because she's pretty horrified by all of that. And hopefully we didn't just lose any listeners as a result of that. Well, so just remember,
just take it one
dead
day
day
at
at
a
a time.
there.
We don't do it nearly as well as Brian does it.
And right before we go, I just want to say I don't know if I'll be casting anymore for a while with you guys. It just depends on everyone's schedule.
Hello.
But if I don't, we have an election coming up in a couple of weeks. I really want everyone to go out and vote. I don't care who you vote for. You're still a good person. We're all friends and family. Be nice to each other, because after this election's over, they're still your friends. They're still your family, regardless of who is elected. And just vote.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
So.
All
that's
right.
it for us.
We will see you next week. And girl, you and I got to get on the Preacher podcast.
We do. If we have any new listeners tonight, for me, Diane and I do a Preacher podcast. We haven't done one in a while. We need to catch up, but go and give us a like and a share and a listen, and you can listen to us there.
It is also hosted by Southgate Media, and it is called The Good News. All right. All right, take care.
Good night.
Good night.